This compost method works too fast. It's crazy. Most gardeners think their compost is working just because it's breaking down. It's not. In fact, the biggest mistake I see, even in experienced gardens, is slow, oxygen-starved compost that's quietly robbing your soil of nutrients instead of building it. That's why you get weak plants, yellowing leaves, and disappointing yields, even when you're doing everything right. Here's the reality. Slow composting isn't just inefficient. It actively loses nitrogen, burns carbon, and creates unstable organic matter your plants can't actually use. And once I realized that, everything changed. Now, before we get into the method that completely flipped my results, let me show you something small that made a big difference early on. I started using a countertop compost bin, the Aeration compost bin, for collecting kitchen scraps daily. It sounds simple, but most people let scraps sit too long or dry out before composting, which kills microbial activity before it even starts. This bin keeps everything fresh, odor-free, and ready for fast breakdown. I'll leave the exact one I use in the description if you want to check it out. That small shift alone sped up my compost process more than I expected. Now let's get into what actually makes compost work fast. And I mean shockingly fast. What most compost piles are missing is not materials, it's biology. The mistake isn't what you're adding, it's how you're managing microbial life. Most compost piles are built like lasagna, layers of greens and browns stacked and left alone. That method works, but it's painfully slow because microbes don't thrive in static environments. They need oxygen, moisture balance, and consistent particle size to multiply rapidly. When I started treating compost like a biological system instead of a waste pile, I saw results in days, not months. The method I use now is based on 3 non-negotiables: particle size, moisture control, and oxygen flow. If any one of those is off, your compost slows down dramatically. The faster your materials break down, the faster your soil improves. Let's start with particle size, because honestly, this is where most people go wrong. If you're throwing in whole vegetable scraps, large leaves, or thick stems, you're actually slowing everything down. Microbes work on surface area, so the smaller the material, the faster they can break it down. In my garden, I chop or shred everything. Kitchen scraps get cut into small pieces. Dry leaves are crushed, and even cardboard gets torn into thin strips. When I switched to this approach, my compost temperature spiked within 48 hours. That's when you know it's working. In raised beds, this matters even more. Faster compost means faster nutrient cycling, which translates to stronger plant growth within the same season. Moisture is where compost either accelerates or, well, completely fails. Here's a rule I follow. Your compost should feel like a wrung-out sponge, not dripping wet, not dry, right in between. Too dry and microbial activity stops. Too wet and you create anaerobic conditions that produce methane and foul odors. And more importantly, destroy beneficial microbes. I test this every time I turn my pile. If I squeeze a handful and no moisture comes out, I add water. If it drips, I add dry carbon like shredded paper or leaves. In container gardening and hydroponic setups, this principle still applies. Even if you're making compost tea or extracts, moisture balance determines whether you're growing beneficial microbes or harmful ones. Oxygen is the difference between fast compost and dead compost. This is where the crazy fast part really comes in. Most compost piles are turned once a week, if that. That's not enough. When I want speed, I turn my compost every 1 to 2 days during the active phase. That introduces oxygen, which fuels aerobic microbes, the ones responsible for rapid decomposition and nutrient-rich compost. The result? Instead of waiting 2 to 3 months, I get usable compost in as little as 2 to 3 weeks. And no, this isn't theory. I've tested this across backyard piles, raised beds, and even small-scale systems for container gardening. There's one trick that makes this method work even faster. Here's where things get interesting. Once your pile is balanced and active, you can inoculate it to push it even further. I take a small amount of finished compost, just a handful, and mix it into a new pile. That introduces a dense population of microbes that immediately start breaking things down. Think of it like sourdough starter, but for compost. This one step alone can cut your composting time nearly in half. And if you're serious about soil health, this is something you should be doing every time. Why this matters more than fertilizer ever will. A lot of gardeners still rely on fertilizers to fix poor plant growth. That's backwards. Fertilizers feed plants temporarily. Compost builds soil permanently. When your compost is fast, active, and microbially rich, it creates stable organic matter, what we call humus. That's what holds nutrients, retains water, and supports long-term plant health. In my raised beds, once I dialed in this method, I stopped needing synthetic inputs entirely. Even organic fertilizers became optional. The soil started doing the work. This is where most people accidentally undo all their progress. Here's a mistake I made early on, and I still see it all the time. People let their compost sit too long after it's finished. When compost is ready, it's biologically active. But if you leave it sitting for weeks without use, that microbial activity declines. I use my compost as soon as it reaches that dark, crumbly stage. Either I mix it into beds, top-dress plants, or brew compost extracts. Timing matters. Even small gardens can use this method effectively. You don't need a huge backyard to make this work. I've run this exact system using small bins, containers, and even compact compost setups for urban gardening. The key is consistency. Collect fresh scraps daily, keep materials balanced, monitor moisture, and turn regularly. That's it. And that's why that small kitchen compost bin I mentioned earlier actually matters. It keeps your inputs consistent and ready to go, which is half the battle. If your compost isn't heating up, here's what's wrong. Let me save you some time troubleshooting. If your pile isn't heating up within a couple of days, one of three things is off. Either your nitrogen is too low, your moisture is wrong, or you're not getting enough oxygen. Fix those three and your compost will come alive fast. And when it does, you'll notice something else. Your plants respond almost immediately once you start using it. Stronger stems, deeper green leaves, faster growth. That's not coincidence. That's biology working the way it should. Once you see this working, you won't go back to slow compost again. After running this method for a full season, I couldn't justify going back to passive composting. It's slower, less efficient, and honestly, wastes potential. Fast composting isn't about doing more work. It's about doing the right things at the right time. And once you understand how microbes, moisture, and oxygen interact, it becomes second nature. This is what separates average gardens from highly productive ones. At the end of the day, the difference isn't luck or expensive inputs. It's understanding how soil actually works. Compost is not just decomposed waste. It's a living system that directly controls plant health, nutrient availability, and yield. When you speed it up correctly, you're not just saving time, you're upgrading your entire garden ecosystem. If you found this useful, subscribe to the channel because this is the kind of practical, real-world gardening knowledge we focus on here. And if you know someone struggling with slow compost or weak plant growth, share this with them. It might completely change how they approach their garden.